Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS in.form. I'm your host, Bill Potter. Today we're going to be talking again with State Senator Mark Messmer from District 48, and we'll be talking about bills that are happening or have happened this week in the state legislature, especially on the Senate side. Senator, welcome to the show.
Great to be here again, as always.
Well, it's always good to have you, and thanks for making it through the weather to be here.
Fighting through the snow today, you bet.
Well, it's good to see you. First of all, let's talk about what happened this week.
Okay, well, the big high-profile bills that passed, that have impact everybody. The big one was Senate Bill 67, and that deals with, it approves some additional funding for local. It's not for statewide spending, but it's for cities and towns and counties across the state. It gives a $430 million shot in the arm to local road funding. That passed out of the House 49-1. The one guy who voted against it said he wanted them just to be able to have the money with no strings attached. Well, they want more money for roads. We're going to have them spend at least 75% of it on roads, or put it in a rainy day fund, for roads that they could spend down, in future years. The other 25% they can spend, however they want, but we wanted the bulk of it to be spent, for road use. I've got the breakdown of how that'll impact. Du Bois County will get $2.1 million for county roads. The city of Jasper will get about $1.7 million in additional funding. Huntingburg will get $438,000. Birdseye will get $8,400. Ferdinand $165,000, and Holland $35,000. So, and Denny Spinner called me a couple weeks ago. He said that is, for them, he said that's several more streets that they can do that they couldn't otherwise. So they were pleased with being able to get that money, and I'm sure it'll get used and then some. But they were very, very happy with that process as it moves through.
Now, how quick will that money come to the?
It'll be available this
entities?
year.
Okay.
It'll get appropriated when it hits, whether it's May, June, July. Not exactly sure what day they'll get the checks, but it'll get distributed this year.
Do they have to use it this year, or
Nope,
can it be we're going to use so much this year and save some?
They could,
as long as it's used for roads.
Well, yep, exactly. They could spend it in future years. They could spend it now. Some might not have immediate need for it, but they can put it back and save it and spend it. Looking forward to. So, very good bill. Should move through the House, I would hope, with no twists and turns, but. We never know. Well,
it's good to see something. A lot of times, to local entities and even to state government from federal, money is mandated that you have to do things that cost money. This is one case where you're giving some money back to do the good things.
Yeah. There are a couple other transportation-related bills, moving through the process. One is House Bill 1001, and it's basically some various degrees of tax increases, for road funding. I'm not sure where that stands in the House, but it's that one is moving through the process as well. And then we've got another one. Senator Yoder's got a bill. I think it might be Senate Bill 333, and it would make an additional distribution, from state revenue this year, like $214 million of projected surplus money that would have gone into it would have gone to either taxpayer refunds or pension fund. Restoration. Instead of putting that money to those two accounts this year, the bulk of that would get distributed, some local, some state, for additional infrastructure work as well.
Now this money, if this bill is now going to the House, will it go through pretty easily next week, or is it? That
one may not. I mean, that one, it'll get sent to the House, whether they deal with it the first half of session or whether they deal with it starting in February. Okay. I'm not sure. Their calendar is probably going to get, from my history in the House, they let things stack up, pretty heavily the last couple weeks of January, and so they'll probably be dealing diligently just to get their House bills through next week, I would expect, because it would have to go through a committee hearing. And there's only about 3 more days of committee hearing time left in the House and Senate. So odds are that they'll start to deal with, with that bill in February during the second half of session, like we will, when House Bill 1001 comes over.
Now, there is a bill that has gone through the House and the Senate, and the governor's desk has signed
Actually, yeah, 2 bills.
2 bills, okay.
And I think we might have talked about that at one of the earlier weeks, but they broke the I-STEP testing problems into two bills. And we had Senate Bill 200, and that does not allow your I-STEP grades to be used for this year's A through F grading. It's just going to put a freeze on, you can't have your grade go down. If you would have by chance had your grade go up because your I-STEP grades this year, we do allow them to go up, but we do not allow anybody's grade to go down due to this year's I-STEP test. And then House Bill 1003 does not allow the A through F grades or the I-STEP grades to negatively impact a teacher performance rating. Now, if those scores would have had a teacher's evaluation go up, we do let it go up, but we don't let any of the grading or test scores to be negatively impacting teacher evaluations or performance pay either. So those were both passed out of each chamber this week and signed by the governor yesterday.
So those are done deals.
Done. Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, you had some bills that have good news on them.
Yep, I had two bills that received some movement this week. One passed out of committee yesterday. It's the Senate Bill 325, and there's currently a program, and TRICAP made me aware of this program a few years ago. It's called Individual Development Accounts, and if you're a low-income family, and we had to make a few tweaks because of some federal guideline changes, we had to update our statute anyway. But while we were at it, we were going to add the ability currently, if you're a low-income family, you can set up a savings plan through this program, and every dollar that the low-income family saves, the state matches it with $3 more, and the state will put in up to $900. Now the family can save more than that, but they'll match up to the first $900 of that, and currently it can be used for higher education, a home mortgage, or to start a small business. That's the three restrictions that it has to be used for. To be able to get the match money, they've got to go through a series of classes on financial literacy and budgeting, and they've got to be able to get a passing grade on that to graduate from the training program, and then they're allowed to access the money for those three purposes. And really, what this bill will do, it'll allow them, and I think it's a very positive step, to use that money to purchase a vehicle. Because if they can't get to work, that was the number 2 reason for people in entry-level jobs to lose their job, and many of these are low-income families, is ability to get to work and not having reliable transportation. So we'll let them use that to purchase a vehicle if it's used to get to work or to get to a college class. For higher education or work purposes, you'll qualify to buy a vehicle for with this type of savings account as well.
So it really isn't changing the program; it's just adding another ability, which makes all the sense in the world to be able to buy a vehicle.
Oh, absolutely. Because very few communities have public transportation, and even communities that have public transportation, does the public transportation route necessarily get you from where you live to where you would work? And sometimes that can be pretty prohibitive. So I got more tweets on that issue than anything I ever have in my life. Yesterday, it was kind of neat to see. I have a Twitter account and I rarely use it, but I'd look and, well, dang, I got another tweet. And I probably had 15 tweets on that, on people that were excited about that bill and to see it moving. So that was pretty neat to see that one move along, and it should get probably go through unamended, I would expect, next week on the floor, and final passage next week.
Well, I think it shows too. TRICAP came to you and said, we have this idea, and that goes to show that in the Senate and the House, you guys want to hear from your constituents because they've got great ideas, and this was one of them.
Yep, and I go to meet with those folks at least once a year just to see what they're doing, how their programs are working, and is there things we can do to help, and do that. For most folks around the community, most agencies, and are always willing to listen to ideas. What can the state do, to make what you're doing better? And this is a great example of that.
Now, your other bill that you've been working on, not that it's the only one, but the deer bill.
Yep, it was for about 15 years ago. There was a group of business owners that wanted to start a program called deer hunting preserves. They're high fenced hunting operations, and they went to the Department of Natural Resources and said, we'd like to set these up. In your opinion, is there anything in our law that would prohibit it? And the DNR director said, nope, you look like you're good to go. And 12 of them started, about 15 years ago. And then about 7, 8 years ago, the new director of DNR said, yeah, I don't really like those operations, I'm going to shut them down. So they started the process of trying to, make up rules that, DNR regulatory rules that would have made them unable to stay open. And one of them took them to court and got an injunction. And then it took a few years to get through the local court process. The local courts ruled against DNR, that they don't have regulatory authority. They took it to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals says you don't have regulatory authority. They took it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said we let the lower court ruling stand. You have no ability to regulate them. So for the past few years, it's been a debate: do we regulate them? Do we not regulate them? Do we let the court cases play out? So basically, that's where the issue's kind of been in limbo all that time. And in June, the Supreme Court said, no, DNR, you don't have any ability to regulate them. And so in August, DNR called me. I'm on the Natural Resources Committee, and I've got deer farmers in my district. I've got a deer preserve in the next county over from my district, and have been pretty familiar with the process. And they came to me and said, would you work with us to fix this problem? Because, and the Court of Appeals also really limited DNR's ability to write any wildlife permits on how they wrote their ruling. And I said, I'll work with you on a bill, but I'm not going to file a bill unless you are intimately involved in crafting it. The Department of Natural Resources and the Board of Animal Health jointly, oversaw where they could the regulation of these. I said, unless I have unanimous agreement from both of you, and you come to committee and endorse the bill, I'm not going to waste my time, because if the agencies come to speak against you in committee, your bill's not going to go very far. So I worked with them. They basically crafted the legislation the way they wanted it, and then I filed it, and it made it through committee last week and received final passage this week. And really was very little debate on the floor. I mean, because you're to the point of now you have a, definitively, by the courts established legal entity with no rules. And this will just set up some common sense boundaries on how big they have to be, what type of cover they have to have, gives the Board of Animal Health complete control over any disease prevention issues or disease spread issues, and any food safety issues, that deals with deer farms or deer hunting preserves.
And now this will move on.
It'll go to the House. And the House had moved various degrees of regulation bills in the past, and none of them ever passed. Some got to the Senate and didn't get a hearing. A couple times one time they had they had a majority vote, but they have to have 26 votes to proceed. So it's been a pulled around issue for about 8 to 10 years, and it looks like this year we might get some resolution, but only with DNR and Board of Animal Health. And Board of Animal Health has been intimately involved in our county this past 2 weeks on the avian flu issue, and are great experts on disease control. We've seen them in action and see how effectively they can work. They came to testify in committee. The big concern about the deer preserves and deer farms was they're concerned that they'll spread disease among the deer population. Well, the Purdue veterinary science folks came to testify to the opposite of that, and the Board of Animal Health came to testify to just the opposite of that. They said if there's any disease spread, it'll come from the wild herd to the captive herd, not the other way around. So there's a lot of restrictions across the country on shipping deer from state to state if there's any disease issues that are happening in other states, and they monitor these things very rigorously, just like they have with the avian flu.
And one more bill that's been going up and down and up and down for years, and we've got just a little time left, is Sunday alcohol sales. Is back up again.
It looks like it's going to get discussed, has been discussed in committee last week in the House. We'll see if it can get enough momentum to get passed. I don't know that I'd say there's probably very little debate, that majority consumers would probably like the convenience of Sunday sales. I've polled that issue probably every other year. I don't know if I had it on my survey this year, but the issue's always been about 50-50. Should we lift the ban? Should we not? On my surveys, it's not overwhelmingly either direction. The discussion is if we allow large retailers to open up to Sunday sales, do we have additional training requirements for clerks? Do we segregate the product, in specific areas? What boundaries are we going to require the large retailers to comply with? So I don't know or do we lift some restrictions on packaged liquor stores, that are going to have to open on Sunday, who have pretty stringent rules on their retail sales. If it moves, it'll probably have to try to balance out the playing field between the package stores, who are going to probably lose some sales or flat sales, with an extra day of being open, versus the big retailers and getting the Sunday sales. But do you put limits on where they display the product, and do they have to train their clerks to the same level and license them the way the package stores do? So it'll be an interesting debate.
It's more than just convenience. You think that's a simple bill, it's convenience. Well, no, there's a whole lot more involved.
Oh, yeah.
Senator, thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
And
Great to be here.
We will see you tomorrow morning.
Yes, VUJC tomorrow. I'm assuming it's at the Advanced Manufacturing.
Yes, I believe it's at the Center for
again.
Technology, Innovation, and Manufacturing.
9 o'clock, weather permitting. So listen to the local radio stations. They will carry cancellation news if there is any. So we'll see how the weather goes. We'll be there, weather permitting.
All right. Now, I hope to see you there. It's at the VUJC. Starts at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's the Jasper Chamber of Commerce Legislative Breakfast. We thank State Senator Mark Messmer, who has been our guest on 18 WJTS in Form. We are local people watching local people.